Right. Well, good morning again and happy April, everybody. Thanks again for joining us for another month of the Schoodic Regional Housing Forums. I am Greg Paduk, Regional Planner at Hancock County Planning Commission, joined as always by Olivia Jolly, another regional planner here at HCPC. If you're new or tuned in for the first time, we host these forums every month, and we have been for the past, 6 or 7 months now. We have a webpage where all of our past forums are kept, and you can go to that page. Well, I'll share that link in a bit, and you can look at past recordings. There's notes from the meetings, other links that were shared, and so you can catch up on that. And thanks for joining us a little earlier this month. And we are pleased to be joined by Peter Buchsbaum, a board member for the Cranberry Island Realty Trust on Cranberry Isle. And we will Q&A with him this morning just to learn more about how the trust started and some of the housing options that they have over there and how the program and the trust has been successful over several decades and how they've been continuing to operate all this time. And Olivia is going to be kind of running the show there, so that's going to be exciting. Plan is to ask Peter some questions, and if you think of any in the meantime, drop them in the chat. If it makes sense, we'll pipe them in during, but afterwards, we have some time. We'll get to the questions at the end, whether you think of them now or later. And one other housekeeping note before I turn it over to Olivia and Peter, in case you need more forums to attend, HCPC recently launched a new monthly series called Hancock Talks. These run on the first Friday of every month. So our next one is on May 1st, Friday, 10 a.m. I'm touching on various municipal topics that are relevant to town leaders and other folks in that realm to help towns continue to grow and learn from HCPC. And so again, that's on Friday, May 1st. We're planning on to talk about demonstration projects and have someone from Maine DOT join us, but we can talk about that more later. Right now, we're going to talk about some housing, and I will turn it over to Olivia to kick us off.
Absolutely. I threw the link to Hancock Talks in the chat in case folks want to check it out. But before we dive into the questions, a little background on Cranberry Isles. It's multiple islands, two larger ones, three smaller ones with a handful of folks living on them. As of the 2020 census, it had 160 residents. All of these islands are under the same town government, which makes it interesting. So you have great Cranberry Island, Islesford, Sutton, Baker, and Bear. And just in terms of housing units for that 160 residents, there's 353 total housing units as of 2020, 71 occupied housing units, and 263 for seasonal, recreational, or occasional use. 57 of those units are owner occupied for the occupied housing units, and 14 are renter occupied. Just wanted to give kind of some context of the size of the community, their housing stock, and the issues they might be facing, so folks can kind of compare it with their own towns and spaces that they're thinking about. And I'll dive right into the questions with Peter, starting off with what is CIRT and what does it do?
Okay. Maybe my message today is yes, we can. The only two of the islands have year-round populations. Sutton has a summer population, as does Bear, has one or two families, and Baker, I think there may be some people from the park living on. If you look at the history in the 19th century, every island had a post office and a school, all five of them. Some of them didn't last very long, but the real survivors are the two Cranberry, Great Cranberry and Little Cranberry. And what we faced, and I've experienced this, I've been going to the island since 1990. What we faced is the older generation passing on, and who's going to replace them? Or are they going to be replaced? And the CIRT started around 1990 with a donation of a house that we said we could take the house if we located it, just get it off the property it was and put it somewhere else, and we were able to do that, and that's what started CIRT. We have now developed a total of 10 houses. Plus, there are 3 others in a second program where we've provided money and assistance, and the houses are subject to covenants. So they're subject to resale price controls, so that they're owner occupied. The 10 we have or are about to have are all rentals, subject to rental restrictions. Our rents are actually below what HUD would allow. So we they're from $800 to $1,400 a month for a 3-bedroom, 1 to 3 bedroom house. But we've been successful and in developing with Maine Housing, the 10 new units. Some of them have date from 2012, and then some from 2023, and some are ongoing right now with our third round with Maine Housing. So it's something that can be done. I think that's the message I have. It's not easy. We're very fortunate on our board to have 3 architects, and I'm the only lawyer on the board, which is a great ratio, because when you're into construction, you got to know what you're doing. And our architects have been very helpful in terms of working with Maine Housing and getting the specs for the housing right. But we've been able to fundraise on our island, and I think there's no reason others couldn't fundraise as well. So it's doable. If you put your mind to it. I can't speak for every place, but I know we can see Schoodic from our island. Just go out to the dock, and there's Schoodic on most days. And I would think there'd be resources, probably more resources there than we have. So I'm being rather optimistic. We've learned, we have developed documents, covenants, and a lease. That took some time. It's something I was familiar with from my work. I was a affordable housing, or still am, affordable housing litigator under the Mount Laurel doctrine in New Jersey. So I've been doing this kind of work myself for about 50 years, which is why when I bought a house on the island, I was immediately requested you ought to join our board. What's your relationship going to be to the island? So I succumbed rather quickly.
Yeah. And so CIRT started out fully volunteer. How did the
Yeah,
community come together around that first house?
basically the only paid staff, we don't have any full-time paid staff. We do have a manager on each island, but they're not full-time. And that's a question we're grappling with now that we're going up to 10 houses, whether we can, how much we can afford. But right now, the fiscal picture looks pretty good for us. And so, I feel like I'm missing a lot. Oh, one thing is really important, I think, that I have some notes here. There was a lot of skepticism on Great Cranberry, where the first houses were built. Why are you giving special favors to these people? And it turned out that the people sold CIRT, the tenants. One is now the town clerk, one's on the select board. I should mention Ingrid Gaither in particular, does about 87 different jobs in the town. We were able to reopen the school. The school closed about 15 years ago. We reopened it 3 years ago in partnership with Little Cranberry, and that makes a big difference. We have only 5 students in the school, but 2 are from Great Cranberry, and I think there'll be some more coming on. And in some, our president's pointed out, probably 30 to 40% of the year-round population is now related to CIRT. So it could very well be that CIRT has preserved, I think, certainly Great Cranberry as a year-round island, because I think it was losing momentum, and we have found younger families to come in, and you can't really replace the older generation, but at least provide new faces. So I think we've had a vital role. That's my prejudiced and optimistic look. Hasn't always been easy. There were times way back when the board wasn't so strong and we didn't get to repair houses as quickly as we should have. But that's all in the past. We've got an excellent board and a good system for getting repairs done and taking care of our tenants. So I've talked for a while. I hope I haven't overstayed my welcome at this point. But when when Greg and Olivia asked me to speak, it was like, yes, you can do this on a small island. And I think the answer is yes. Not that it's easy, not that there aren't challenges, there certainly are, but it is doable.
Have you run into any challenges building at a smaller scale, or could you describe the process of getting houses built out on an island?
Yeah, if you want to ever come to the Great Cranberry Island and go to the museum, you will see a video of the 2012 houses being brought over on a barge and trucked up the hill. They were modulars and deposited on site. So that was the first set of new houses we did. The more recent ones are stick built, and we have photos of those. I took photos. It is a challenge. I mean, you have barge schedules, you have weather to deal with. The costs are really outrageous. I would say the houses cost, depending on the size, but they average out of 400 to 500,000 each to build, and we have donated land. So you have to scale that, and Maine housing and its forgivable mortgages are essential in terms, and the Genesis Fund providing bridge financing has also been essential. But yeah, there are challenges. You have to stay on top of the construction as it's going on. Oh, there was just a question about why do we just switch to stick built, because the people doing I think it was we couldn't get the modulars anymore. It's an outfit that's on Route 3, and I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, but their sign is right along Route 3, and they were very helpful in the first set, but we just couldn't swing it any further with them. And I don't know that the cost picture was all that different, but we had, the University of Maine has a housing project in Orono about they've built some 3D printer houses. We haven't explored those as an option, but I've seen pictures of them. Maybe they are an option.
And so you've mentioned Maine housing funded projects, and I think Cranberry Isles and Ellsworth and Bucksport are the only towns to have any projects funded through Maine housing. Could you describe what that process was like and what program you worked through Maine housing with?
They have a program to fund island housing, and they basically provide a forgivable mortgage. It's not an easy program. Ken Schmidt, our president, said the closing of the last houses was a closing from hell. It ain't easy, but we did it. We have competent counsel, from Ellsworth. Getting so terrible with name. Justin. I got to get my other machine out. Justin Hamilton, I think it is. One of the firms in Ellsworth that I think was Eaton Peabody merged into a larger firm. But we've been able to
Justin Bennett.
Justin Bennett. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for telling me who I am, David. But they've been very helpful, and so after 25 years since we have good counsel, I'm finally retiring from the board this summer. They don't need me to lawyer them up anymore. But we've had to go through that and work on the documents. It's not the easiest thing in the world, But but basically, I think the key is having a strong board. Our president, Ken Schmidt, is fantastic, and our treasurer, Jim Keogh, is amazing, because one of the things you really have to watch are your finances. I have this vivid picture in my mind of the Trenton YMCA becoming a hole in the ground because they undertook a project they could not ultimately fund. And that's always a risk with a nonprofit. So it's incredibly important to have a board and a treasurer that stay on top of the finances as you go along, because these are significant projects.
And
But
you
they're doable.
mentioned fundraising. How has that been handled by the board and the entity?
We have the spouse of a board member is an accomplished fundraiser. We also talked to, and I forget his name. I think he was on the select board in Bar Harbor for a while. But we've reached out to people. We've reached out for.
Gary Friedman.
Yep, yep. Boy, I wouldn't be able to do this without you, David. But Sam Reese has been head our development task force, has been incredible. Board members, every one of us has stepped up to the extent of our means. There's been support from the island, but particularly when people saw how much we were doing to preserve the island as a year-round entity. We've gotten several six-figure gifts. We've raised $1 million at this point. And I gotta believe on the mainland, it probably would be easier to raise some of this money if people thought it was essential to the continuation of communities. I mean, that's the name of the fundraising campaign is Welcome Home. And that's the idea. You want a year-round community. This is some of the things you have to do if you're blessed with means to help out in a significant way. Please come and help us. So that's been the pitch.
Peter, how do you handle property taxes?
We have a lower tax rate because we do pay them, but we have a lower rate because we're income constrained. No, good question. We went back and forth with that as to whether we would pay them at all. We pay something, in my best recollection, but we're not paying the full market rate. And then you never know where you're going to find allies. We inherited a piece of land. Some of it was on the waterfront, and we certainly weren't going to build a house on the waterfront. So we gave an easement to the property to the Maine Coast Heritage Trust, and they paid us half the value of the easement. So that was $50,000. And I am so envious because try to replicate that in New Jersey, where my winter residence, the idea of an environmental group working that closely with a housing group is so alien. But that's one strength in Maine, is that there's a real jointure between the environment and housing, because without a year-round population, it's more difficult to sustain the environment. And so I think there's an unusual sensitivity and a chance for allyship with the between the two sets of interests. As a matter of fact, I don't have an Island Institute hat yet, Olivia, but I'm wearing my Maine Coast Heritage Trust hat. We've worked pretty closely with them, and not Kim Hamilton, Kate Stokey came out to one of our events from the Maine Coast Heritage Trust.
Peter, if you were asked to set a goal for the number of residences that you feel would idealize the community, are you bold enough to give us a number?
Well, I would say we're at 10 on the Cranberries, plus the 3 houses that are subject to covenants. And I think we're set for now.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they vary. The new ones are ADU, which is just essentially a single,
Right.
large single room. We have a 1 bedroom and several 3 bedrooms. But if you look at the census, which Olivia mentioned, it actually went up between 2010 and 2020, and I think that's CIRT. So I would say we're, given the number of houses and the number of year-round residents in the island, I think our 10 is something we're going to be with for a while, and given our management capabilities. But I can't speak for, Schoodic or other communities might have a lot more capacity. The 10 is, for a couple small islands, is a big number. But, it could be 30 elsewhere. And if we were looking at the Island Housing Trust in Bar Harbor, I think they must have, they have 3 or 4 different programs. And by the way, we have used them as models and doing documents and just help. We used to be in touch with Marla quite frequently, particularly in our more formative stages. So you have that resource, which is significant. And the Island Institute has just started a housing, recently Kim Hamilton announced in the Working Waterfront that they now have a housing policy. And I've been co-chair of the Island Housing Coalition for that group. And, when people left, I said, you can't leave us in the lurch. We got to continue. And eventually, the leadership of the Island Institute decided housing was an essential housing, so essential to the maintenance of working waterfronts.
You made a comment earlier about modularized housing. Could you go into more detail on why you think that was curtailed?
Well, it was an outfit. We got the houses from, I think, New Brunswick, Canada, as I recall. You're talking, 12, 13 years ago. And, that seemed to be the most functional alternative at the time. When we turned again to them, 5 years ago, it turned out it wasn't an available option. And it wasn't, the stick built housing was competitive. So, not to say if you were contemplating doing it, you wouldn't look at that. I would even get a hold of the program at the University of Maine, find out if it may or may not be feasible, but it certainly could be a lot less expensive way of building a house, just printing it. But
Carolyn Pryor has started a company, Zero Homes, I think it's called, and has just situated a new modular home in Trenton near the old golf course there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, it also may be easier, the modulars, you wouldn't have to barge them over.
Right.
Yeah.
So it might be an easier alternative.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
So wrapping up the planned question portion, how has CIRT managed to run projects on 2 separate islands? It feels like there might be issues in terms of fairness or making sure you're serving all kind of sub-entities of the larger town.
Well, we are a town-wide organization. The board is always, it's 15. We always make sure it's, with 13, it's 7-6 or 6-7. So there's always a substantial representation from each island on the board. Our houses first were built in Great Cranberry because Great Cranberry had land. Islesford was much more land constrained. And that's why, and we had this donation of 15 acres on Great Cranberry. Nothing like that was available on Little Cranberry. So there was a bit of tension there. And when we first started fundraising for the new projects and the new houses in Little Cranberry, there was some resistance. They hadn't had the experience of the Great Cranberry had with these tenants contributing so much to the island. But eventually that was overcome, and was a determined effort by our board. And also, we had a house that we were able to sell, and the proceeds went to help the Little Cranberry project. So there was, I think, unselfishness in terms of the board in making sure that both islands would end up with housing activity. But it was a push. It was there, but I think the board understood we needed to serve both islands. I don't think the board did understand we needed to serve both islands. And eventually, when Alsford was able to find some land opportunities, we were able to do it. So now we'll have 10 houses, 5 on each island. And I think one of the income constrained houses, for sale houses, was on Great Cranberry, and 2 on Little Cranberry. So you're right, Olivia, it's been an effort, but something we have to be conscious of. So it's something we've tried to overcome. I think so. With this latest development, we have overcome it.
Yeah, so do folks have any questions for Peter?
Yeah, just kind of what's the general process that you have to go through to fund a house? I mean, you guys have the land, it's been donated, and you're the owner of the house, the 501 3C, and then
Yeah.
you use the land to as your portion of the mortgage, and then the main funding mortgage pool will advance the construction costs. Is that how it happens, or?
Yeah, well, I can't say it's part of the mortgage because it's the land, and
Okay.
basically in Little Cranberry, we were able to buy some land and got some land from the town, and we did purchase some property in Little Cranberry. So it was a more mixed operation, but it just, whatever the costs were, folded into the mortgage.
How much do they fund? I mean, you have to, you said you had a pretty good endowment.
So my best recollection, it's 240, 240 per unit. So if you're building 2 units, it's 480.
So I mean, they fund 100% of the costs?
No, they
Okay.
then we get Genesis to
Mhm.
do the balance, and then we fundraise to try to bring Genesis down to a reasonable level, which is, we've been able to do. The million we've raised has partly gone to, paying off Genesis. But
Yeah.
they've been an invaluable. Steve McDermott there is absolutely wonderful. He comes to
Yeah.
our annual meetings, and I would recommend him as a contact. They've been extremely helpful because you're right, Alan. You need someone kind of to help facilitate the process. Provide the caulking.
Yeah.
And they're very, in conjunction with Maine Housing. We have these 2 sources, Genesis and Maine Housing.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
Um,
I mean, it sounds really great what you're doing. I mean, 10 is a lot for that island. I mean, it's a good part of the thing. And
yeah,
and unfortunately, I have to jump off with the rest of the people. There's a DART meeting at 10, so that's why everybody had to jump off early. But thanks for putting this all together.
yeah.
Okay.
I've got to commend I'm sorry, I'm from Hunterdon County, New Jersey. So the HCPC, Hancock County, I guess I like counties with an H. I've been impressed with their interest in this process, Olivia and Greg in particular, but I'm on the community planning committee for Cranberry, for the Isles. Yeah, I'm sorry, someone was going to speak.
Bye, Alan. So Lane, Brittany, any questions, comments, concerns?
I'm
No, this is very, very interesting, and congratulations on all this. Uh, it would be interesting to learn more about the fundraising aspect of it. I'm in Washington County, and we're very concerned about housing, as is everyone else. But the fundraising aspect is interesting. Um, when I've spoken with some housing trusts, they speak to fundraising and how communities rally around that as well. So that's um, definitely an important aspect of it.
Well, if you want to send me your email address, I can see if you know, I can see if Frank Reese is available to give you more detailed guidance. But
That'd be great.
definitely the sales pitch around here was, you want an island community, we need your help. But, we can't want to see cranberries kind of fade away, you know, and there's a real commitment, I think, on the part of the summer. There's always that tension between summer and year-round people, but I think there's also a lot of cooperation on the cranberries. You know, there's some of that you people and some of that, some of that goes on. I can't deny it. But there's also, for most of the time, most of us have friends in the year-round. Summer people have friends in the year-round community, and vice versa. We're not isolated from each other. So when something like this comes on, you can sell the idea that we need the year-round community, and it's important to have the local support for a year-round population. I would think that's true in a lot of places.
What
know,
could be
curious.
what could be done? I'm sorry. What
David, you
could
go
be
ahead.
done to encourage families with youngsters to uh, migrate to your islands?
Well, we do advertise broadly, locally and on Zillow. And when you advertise on Zillow, you get some people with stars in their eyes who
Yeah.
have no idea what it's going to be like. We even had a couple that committed to moving into a house. When they showed up, member of the couple said, "I don't want to be this isolated," because it was the woman who was going to work. So now we require everyone to visit the island. But it's just a matter of some people, reaching out broadly and
Sure.
hopefully finding candidates who understand what island life is like.
Yeah.
And at Washington County, at least you don't have to worry about a ferry in the winter. But
No,
it's not easy anywhere.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure whoever you're attracting has some, that it isn't nirvana. It's nirvana with strings attached.
it's interesting because in Washington County, we have people that have moved here. I live in Eastport, and we have people that move here because they come on vacation and they just fall in love with it. And then they realize the reality of living in this rural, at this point, to get to something like a mall, we're headed to Augusta. Bangor doesn't even have a mall anymore. So it's, it's, uh, to go to an eye specialist is 5, 6 hours round trip. And so people, if they stay here, we tend to say, if you stay for 2 winters, we think you're staying. And because it's
Yeah.
just, well, we're not an island. In a way, we are islanded.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very true. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to put up with what it takes to we don't have a doctor on the island. We
Mm.
do have some emergency personnel, but that's not like having a doctor, and you have to be willing to put up with that. Um, If you have kids, you got to be accepting of a very small school. Unbelievably, some of our families homeschool. The rest of us wonder, like, the school has 5 kids. It's almost like homeschooling. But at any rate, it is what it is.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah,
Hmm.
you've got to, and fortunately, we've been able to find younger families from the 40s and younger to be willing to do that. But it's not a huge pool.
The Island Institute has outreach, and I've lost track of how many communities they're trying to work with, but have they dedicated special efforts to trying to engender interest in living on islands?
I would say with the Island Housing Coalition that they start, it's more a forum for discussing problems like insurance and construction and what subsidies are available. But we usually get 30 or 40 people who come to the meetings, and the Island Institute has committed to continuing the coalition. And like I said, they've just formally adopted a housing policy, which,
Yeah.
if you look at the working waterfront and you see Kim Hamilton's article, it's very good. And I'm
Mhm.
actually going to be talking to her. I've never had met her, but I wrote great article. Thank you. And I'll be talking to her to help cement whatever it is they're going to do. But they've been supportive in the sense of this coalition, where they've provided some staff assistance, and now it sounds like they're going to be even more supportive.
Peter, just
Um,
to clarify, the Island Housing Coalition is a separate coalition from their main islands coalition, or is
uh,
it connected?
I don't know that they're two. Are you talking about things run by the?
The
I
Island
mean,
Institute.
no, there's just
Um,
one. There's just one
okay.
entity. Yeah. What happened was at the beginning, Alex Staropoli, I think her name was, is
Alex Saparo.
we keep on losing people to the Lincoln County planning. Lincoln County must be dynamite because the two people we've lost to them have been just fantastic.
Yeah.
Alex and the more recently, um, Erin, I think it was.
Yeah.
Um, any rate, um, yeah, it's just one group, and what happened was when it started, Alex asked for volunteers to be chairs, and I figured this is an easy lift. This wouldn't be much of anything. So I said, "What the heck?" And I raised my hand. That was a big. That was much took on much more than I'd expected. I'm not going to say it was a mistake because it wasn't, but and it's a they've faced the choice several times of discontinuing it and continued it, which and now they're like I said, it seems to be strengthening its um, and I give credit for you folks at the county. It seems like you're into this effort too.
Yeah, we're trying. And it's coming along. So you've been obviously the island itself and the board has been great at building that community and that sense that, we need to work together to make this a reality.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to some of the larger towns on the mainland, either, from a planning organization standpoint or even the municipal standpoint of how they can start those conversations or increase that level of engagement and commitment and interest in supporting housing for the greater community?
That's a very good question. We've had a good relationship with our select board because the people on the select board are us. One of them is a CERT person, but even before that, there was an understanding that we have to preserve the island community, and the select board was very responsive. Now, that's not always the case. One of my friends, Mark Lapping, was dean at Rutgers Planning School, became dean at Southern Maine of Planning, and I solicited his opinion, and he said it was Farmington, I think, there was the NIMBYs came out and defeated a project. And we've had some of that in Northeast Harbor, the measly 6-unit project. All of a sudden, the neighbors decided, this is beneath them. But so far, their efforts have been rejected in court. But it is important to take the tenor of the political leadership, like you say, and just tell them this is a vital concern. And that's why you have entities like the Maine Coast Heritage Trust sort of cooperating, and Island Housing, the Island Institute. I think you have to say it's, you want a viable community in Maine, and you want it not to be just a summer place. You want a vibrant working waterfront. This is part of it. And that's the way I would approach. And then if the NIMBY issue comes up, you'll have some base of support that this is part of what we need in the community. Maine has developed some stronger laws though about allowing towns to more flexibility in zoning for housing. And that's been helpful. We've had representatives from the Maine legislature and the governor's office come in to our coalition. So that can be helpful as well. Bring some of those folks on board. So that's been successful. So that's another way of approaching the issue, showing that the state recognizes, there's an overall recognition of the needs for housing.
30. Any more questions, folks?
I applaud your commitment to this effort. I think it's great to have local people work so hard to try to keep the community together.
Yeah, we've had an incredible amount of support from the community and from the board. I mean, when I joined up the board in around 2000, it wasn't nearly as strong a board as it is now. And that's so important when you have a fundraising campaign to have a board that's willing to go out there to bat for it, a board that's willing to work on the projects. So that's something I would encourage.
Well, I would you express an interest in the 3D printed home in Orono, and if you have an interest, you should contact Habib Dagger. He's the head of that.
Yeah, I was in touch with them a while, but it's been about a year. But it shouldn't be hard to find if I can find some old emails. But it's definitely a separate study program at the University of Maine in Orono. And I could probably, David, find the contact info because I know I had it at some point.
Yeah. Well, if I have it, if you don't, so just let me know.
All right. Yeah. It wasn't. In fact, just bring out my other.
Have others seen this? Others on the Zoom? Have you ever been up there? Yeah.
Yeah, I was able to go up and we took a tour of the model home, and they kind of explained the process of how it was built. And I think I don't know how it can be scaled, or I'm sure they've tried to work on it being scaled, but it being in there, it felt like you were in a home. Sounds like costs, it's energy efficient too. It's production, I think, is the way to do it and figure that out.
Maine and 3D printed houses.
Any
And
other
Yep,
final
here it is.
questions?
just a clarification that the Maine Island Coalition ran by Island Institute is different than the Maine Island and Coastal Affordable Housing Coalition, but Island Institute doesn't really have a page that mentions that specifically. So just in case there's confusion and folks are looking into that, there are two different Maine Island coalitions that Island Institute runs. One just has and coastal affordable housing in the title.